What happened?
What happened over there?
Just in the hole.
There you go.
This probably looks very confusing. Just legs and arms. Okay. Okay, I wanted to begin just by asking you guys a question. What do you think makes a healthy community? Like outside of celebration, outside of the larger thing that we're trying to do here, like just being individuals, loving individuals in a household, what do you think makes our interactions, makes our daily lives together healthy? Everybody can answer. So.
Not having expectations for people, so just accepting them however they choose to show up in the moment.
Okay.
Patience and awareness.
Patience and awareness.
Accountability.
We've actually had very in-depth discussions about accountability, whether it's imposed by other people or whether it's self-imposed or what that line is.
Yeah. Both.
Sometimes, yeah, it has to be both.
Being aware of discerning between the ego when the ego is acting, so egolessness.
Egolessness and awareness.
And awareness.
Okay.
Dragons.
Dragons, yeah, totally, man. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, they communicate to each other, and the answer is communication. Thank you, Alice Trebek. Can I have my money?
No, you may not. Anyone else want to chime in?
Love.
I was gonna say communication, but I didn't want to patronize the whole. I wanted to make it more.
For the record.
Acknowledge the route that you took. So. Funness.
Fun
Yeah.
and carefree. Yes.
Be chill.
The ability to let go and joke, but also be
Have a direction.
Have a direction.
Be chill and concise.
Concise.
I think what Hunter. Oh, sorry.
Are you done?
Yeah, I guess so.
The things that came up when you said that for me was vulnerability, or the willingness to be vulnerable, and understanding where the other person is at. So putting yourself in other people's shoes always.
Yeah. Vulnerability and empathy.
Are you
No.
summarizing what
No,
everyone's
I'm
saying?
just trying to understand it, but I love what you said.
Yeah, I say vulnerability and empathy.
What Hunter had mentioned in that email is having some sort of mutual motivator, or I don't know, how did you word it? Some, we were saying that mindfulness is
The commonality.
Commonality, yeah. Common interests, I guess.
The glue.
Yeah, I agree 100% with all of those. So, I don't think there is one answer we could possibly give. I mean, maybe there's a way we could try to condense it down to where it touches every single thing that we said. But a big kind of interlacing theme, I think, of what we're talking about is kind of what Hunter said.
Dragons.
Dragons. No. Just a sense of some sort of healthy and fully aware, or as aware as possible, that healthy communication between every individual in this house, and whether that's verbal communication or energetic communication, you can break it down however you want to, but just sort of acknowledgement where's everybody's at, acceptance of where everybody is, and trying to be able to come as close to having an understanding of where everybody resides. So, with that being said, I'm working on this lovely chart, a work in progress, and I'm more than open to having you guys have your input. I've already started asking some of you what you think belongs on this chart. So what I'm trying to create here is sort of like a, what? Move it forward?
Yeah.
I don't think the camera's gonna be able to see it. I'll read it to you guys. But where was I? I've begun asking you guys kind of what you think belongs on this. But what I'm trying to create here is some sort of like healthy communication cheat sheet. And ideally what I was thinking is you know, as we've talked about trying to extend celebration outwards, you know, creating communities elsewhere, not just residing here, but communities that share the same intention, the same sort of like that glue that holds them together. How can we help move that along? What can we offer as this entity to provide to future communities? Sorry, words are hard. I didn't rehearse any of this except for in my head, so okay. So yeah, one of the main things that I've been thinking about the past couple of days, and what I've been talking to my psychologist Cara about, is like how important communication is. And when we undermine like healthy communication, it really like pulls apart everything. It's just harder for us to coexist like harmoniously when we don't have a good basis of where we're at and where the other person's at, and how we can, you know, interact with each other that leaves us both not feeling, you know, completely distraught or ignored or overwhelmed. That sort of thing. So what sort of mutual agreement can we come to make that to help us get to that point? So some of the stuff that I've pulled out, like the 4 horsemen of relationships. This is something that was like kind of comprised or kind of made up like the research that relationship psychologists and relationships counselors have agreed lends itself to the failure of relationships. And so when I think about each one of you, we have like, you know, our own individual relationships. They're constantly developing, but they're very different from one another. Some kind of similar, some drastically different, but they all have their own unique intricacies. So with that being said, we can look to these things that pretty much always, regardless of the style of relationship, these things are going to point to those relationships crumbling, because it's really hard for humans to function under these in a conscious, aware way. And before I move any further, I just want to say that no one can make you feel a certain way. No one can like make you do anything, right? We don't have that control over each other if we really are honest with ourselves. But what we do offer each other is a way of interacting, a way of being with each other that helps foster a greater sense of awareness, helps foster a greater sense of love. So those sort of natural responses, which oftentimes look like these, like criticism, defensiveness, contempt, stonewalling, those things can be very innate within us, like very natural ways of reacting, but we can help give each other the ability to kind of override that instinctual reaction so that we all feel better about like our interactions. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? I hope so. Okay, so I'll read them to you real quick. Else is making me very nervous. Okay, so criticism is first on the list. So this looks like, why can't you do this right? This is different from a complaint because this focuses specifically on character and behavior. So we can just, you know, if you guys want to like imagine or think back on times you've had interactions with people in the household or people outside of the household that looked like criticism, and how more than likely this criticism didn't result in a positive reaction. Because it hurts. It hurts to be criticized, of course. The next on the list, a natural reaction to criticism, is defensiveness. The problem isn't me, it's you. So this looks like self-protection and a retaliation to ward off the attack. So, again, totally makes sense when we're criticized. Why would we want to be defensive? Because even if the other person's right, if they think they can come here and make some sort of, criticism about how I'm doing things, again, even if they're right, they have no right to do that sort of thing. The next is contempt. So that can look like you're so dramatic, you're so gross. So this is treating your partner with disrespect. And that can look, again, different in terms of every relationship, but has this underlying theme of disrespect. Or ridicule. So thinking of the other as less than. So again, more specifically, this can look like eye rolling or sarcasm used in, supposed serious conversations. The next is stonewalling. So this sounds like, whatever, that's not my problem, or I don't care. So this is habitually avoiding conflict or withdrawing from interactions, shutting down or turning away, or acting busy. And stonewalling is a self-protection. Like, it makes total sense that we would want to do this, especially if somebody's coming at us with something that, we had no say in. Like, if they want to talk about something, if they want to do something that we're not 100% into or didn't facilitate on our own, it can be totally natural for us to just kind of shut down and avoid. But on a positive note, criticism's positive counterpart has a gentle startup. So this looks like nonviolent communication, which you all know very well. I'll happily go over it again if you want me to. And then defensiveness has a positive counterpart that looks like take responsibility. So this is accepting your partner's perspective and offering an apology or acknowledgement for wrongdoing. Well, it doesn't mean you have to, accept that they think you did something wrong if you don't feel like you did something wrong, but just acknowledging where they're coming from, and maybe from their perspective it totally does look like you're in the wrong, and you might not agree with that. But it's more about their perspective in that moment. And then building a culture of appreciation. This one's really important. It is the positive counterpart to contempt, which this is to remind yourself of your partner's positive qualities and find gratitude for them. So maybe you guys can help me to come up with how these two go together very well, or more specific examples. And the last one, positive counterpart to stonewalling, is to practice self-soothing. So sometimes the self-soothing just looks like, hey, I acknowledge that you want to talk about this thing right now, or you want to do this thing right now, but I'm not feeling prepared. And totally reasonable. Sometimes we feel blindsided by those requests. But the important thing is to remember that some sort of compromise has to be made. Like, for example, if somebody wants to talk about something and you're not interested, then the compromise isn't to say, well, we're just not going to talk about it. To find some sort of comfortable place in the middle, like talking about it later, taking a few minutes or maybe a day if needed. And then other self-soothing practices, of course, that could be like deep breathing, meditation, something to ground yourself and to reflect on the request that's being made, or the action that's being taken by the other person. Okay, so I'll stop there so I can stop talking and we can get some discussion going. Do you guys have any I totally disagree with something on here, or I really appreciate this this perspective about this particular thing, or more tangible, like how can we utilize this in our everyday interactions? Does anybody have anything they want to say?
I appreciate the part about criticism, because like even if that person is coming from, like even if they are right or whatever, like automatically if someone is criticizing me, or like I feel like they're coming at me in a way that is criticizing something that I'm doing, it's so natural for me to want to protect myself and you know, be like defensive.
Yeah,
So I
absolutely.
appreciate the acknowledgement of that.
I think the positive aspects for stonewalling of the practicing self-soothing can actually be for the person who is stonewalling and is recognizing it, but also for the other person who is being stonewalled, and just I think that's really nice that it can work on both levels.
Yeah.
Because stonewalling, it's a sort of unconscious reaction as well. That's what I hear. It is very much, and it's prone to happen more in certain people than others. Like I'm a super victim of that, and the difficult part is that in stonewalling is that you might think that you're doing it for the sake of everything, but you're just kind of like, yeah, you're kind of yeah, it's an unconscious behavior, so it's not really coming from the best place.
Yeah.
So
I think it's important to acknowledge, like, stonewalling is often fostered by contempt. You know, that, so contempt is, you know, like, you're so dramatic, that sort of thing. So because you're so this, I'm not going to buy into whatever you're talking about. You know, which unfortunately, like, the reason that feels good is because it puts being, you know, having contempt for someone puts us in this higher place. Like, you're so dramatic, I'm composed, so let me just, like, shut it down and you can be dramatic, you know? And so a really frustrating cycle that, yeah, just as you said, it's just oftentimes totally unconscious, a very natural reaction. Yeah.
I really like those.
Cool. Yay.
contempt normally is perceived in a positive way, but here it has a negative connotation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's more of like a sense of it's like what I understand is like a diminutive approach towards the other person.
Yeah.
I mean diminutive attitude.
Mm.
Is that putting down attitude or diminutive
So.
attitude? So how do we? So when we recognize the pattern, what do you suggest?
We recognize like the patterns to do
use the counteractive.
Yeah, so these positive counter what did I say? Positive counterparts. They're on the opposite side. So this looks like taking responsibility, using nonviolent communication, building the culture of appreciation, which I haven't fully wrapped my head around, like how we can use those. But for the most part, like I just feel like that is compassion. Having the compassion to override that contentment. And then like self-soothing is always a good thing to do. Especially, in a community that has, so many differing needs and like constantly like sort of like butting heads with people. It's just, because we're humans. But yeah, I feel like that's a that's a good place to start. And the more we can be conscious of these patterns, we can try to integrate these positive counterparts and see if they're actually like effective ways to do it, and then hopefully develop more effective strategies on top of that.
Build a culture of appreciation is really interesting because it's like, you know, like it's just really rare for people, like families or friends or like people who live together, to like intentionally like set up systems in that environment to like appreciate the people around you or encourage them or uplift them, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like actively, like, you know, like positive reinforcement kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, or like having specific times where you know, express appreciation. I mean, like an example of like how we do it is like if someone cooks dinner, you know, we thank them.
Mm-hmm.
Like implementing more things like that
Yeah.
just feel like they're sort of part of the culture of things, of like how we do things as a community. And like, like creating maybe more like intentional moments where we appreciate each other and the things that we do would be cool. And I think just in general would like help be almost like preventative of the bad side of things. Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way to explain it.
I think like compassion and empathy speaks to a lot of this.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's widely applicable in like almost any sector in there. Kind of tapping into that, somehow drawing your attention and like incorporating compassion, recognizing this person as, you know, same as you, and feeling empathy. Just putting yourself in their shoes and trying not to judge and just treat them as you would want to be treated.
Mm-hmm. Actually, one reason I really am excited about this is because, like, a lot of what we are about here, what's been expressed, is just kind of, you know, creating a more conscious life, creating a more aware life. So, one of the frustrating things about being human is that we have so much that fosters our everyday life, and you know, we may think that we're very aware of these things, but we have this whole realm of subconscious thoughts and subconscious actions that totally, like, I don't want to say control, but sort of, you know, you have a big say in what we do every day. So I forgot where I was going with that. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, when we really like analyze how we communicate with each other, we sort of like take away the things that remain in our subconscious. So I feel like for the most part, communication and human interaction, like the patterns that we pick up on and the sort of tactics that we use to interact with each other reside in that subconscious. So the more we figure out how to integrate these conscious patterns into our life, the more say and the more compassion, the more empathy, the more awareness we can have at the forefront of our communication interaction. I hope that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Johnny.
I think that in the chart
Mm-hmm.
between the negative and the positive aspect, I would add something that Alice was talking to me today of her practice. Do you want to talk about this? Like a red flag for the 3 breaths, the conscious breaths, what we were talking, or the 3 breaths. One.
Just breathing.
So just calling for a breath
Mm-hmm.
should be like the red flag for everybody to know.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you take a breath? Can we take a breath? Like right in the middle with those dotted lines so that we can move into the
Yeah.
positive, like so that we know that we're not saying like you should calm down or something like that, but it's like, can we take a breath
Yeah.
and then go from there and then try to like see if we're coming from stonewalling, contempt, defensiveness of criticism. I think will be a good red flag.
Yeah.
I think that's been really helpful for me in many situations to, like you said, like to transition that line, just to bring that up, like let's take a breath. And it's very helpful to bring you into your awareness and into your body instead of in your mind.
Yeah, it's weird because like when things get really tense and like you feel it, emotions start to like come up with that, and so that kind of takes control of the conversation. And so if it's feeling heavy and tense, taking breaths will allow some oxygen flow into your brain that kind of grounds you and doesn't allow your emotions to take control, and you say things that aren't actually true and they're just reactions of unconscious patterns.
Pain body.
You particularly practice it in a way that is very fulfilling. I feel like when I'm having a conversation with you, you're always breathing, aware of your breath, and I can tell when you're doing it. So it kind of like motivates me to do it as well and try to like follow up on that and continue to do it.
Thanks. Helps me pay attention because usually when I'm breathing and I take big breaths when someone's talking, I'm not paying attention. Like I like notice I'm not paying attention, so it'll bring me back to the conversation.
But yeah, the take responsibility part too is like, like sometimes like I feel like that doesn't look like necessarily like owning up to something like you said, you know, but like just like being more like observational and like reflective of like your own thoughts, and it's like, okay, like what am I thinking? Where is this coming from? Is any of that, like grounded in reality, or is this coming from, like an egoistic place, or like a subconscious sort of like habitual unhealthy like habit or whatever? But just like being that's what I think of when I think of take responsibility, is just sort of like taking a step back from like your own thoughts and like observing them and being like, okay, like let's not take those too seriously, and like really try to like analyze the situation from a conscious perspective, and like not take our own thoughts too seriously, or at least like observe them and recognize that like they might be coming from like an emotional place, and like we should just focus on the emotion rather than the thoughts.
Yeah.
And breathing, I feel like, is a way to do that too. It's just to like, when you take a breath, you're sort of just like centering yourself, grounding yourself, like not, you're getting more into your body versus like getting caught up in your thoughts. Which is good.
So just for the sake of reiterating, like as structured and what's the word, contrived as it may feel, if that's right, nonviolent communication is incredibly helpful because it overrides pretty much all of these. If you're really conscious about the way you structure your sentences, your statements, and your communication, then like I said, like you're just being really conscious and you're overriding these negative attributes. So like again, just to reiterate, when I observe the dishes not being done after you said you would do them, like if we all agree as a community that's something we're gonna do, then I feel let's say, sad because I have a need for like trust and stability. So would you consider either we can reframe the agreement, or would you consider letting me know next time you're not going to do them or can't do them, that sort of thing? I feel like, sometimes we have a very blunt way of just kind of approaching each other, which, I think we're doing fine, but for the most part it just can be helpful, so that way we're not so reactive to those, criticism, like, hey, you didn't do the dishes. Instead of getting defensive about those things, instead of it feeling like a criticism, even if it might be warranted, it kind of helps us both come at it from a more conscious and calm state of being.
I'm trying to grab my charger.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be helpful to have more nonviolent communication practice in the house?
Like, what do you mean?
Like, oftenly try to embrace nonviolent principles of nonviolence communication more oftenly?
Yeah. It would be really helpful, like, if any time you perceive that somebody is coming at you with a criticism, if immediately you can respond with, hey, I hear you, can we try nonviolent communication? Now, if the person is in a place of really, like, hot and heavy criticism, really, really frustrated, then I don't really expect that NVC is going to be communicated, because sometimes you just want to be violent about things, right? So, but we can do our best to try to, like you said, incorporate these more in everyday practices. I think there's probably several ways we can do it.
But what if the situation doesn't correlate with the state of feeling that I get? Like, it's hard for me to, for example, if I put an example, and I'm gonna put it for the sake of the conversation as a possibility. Like, if somebody leaves something like where it shouldn't be, and for a while, and perhaps, it doesn't make me feel bad, and I kind of like overlook it for a while, and it doesn't really bother me. But I know that if I know who it is and has it been going, like, should I take the role of like making it, because it's kind of that affecting the flow of things. That's not the way things should be going. Like, for example, plates should not be left dirty in the sink, or a yoga mat shouldn't be left somewhere, or things like that. It doesn't really make me feel bad, but I'm also kind of like, for the most part, how do you address the nonviolence communication to do that?
Yeah.
To call out like, hey, doesn't make me feel bad, but that
Yeah.
place.
Pick up your
So,
shit.
do you, why shouldn't you leave plates? Why shouldn't you leave yoga mats out?
Well, for example, I had there was a mat outside. It got dirty, and it was out there, and there was quite a few other things. There's been a mug that was out there too, and things like that, and a towel the other day, and I picked them up, and everything. But the mat needs to be clean and all that. So do you go before the person, and but it's not like a remind. It's more like a reminder than just like. It really makes you feel no indifference. I mean, you can leave it there. I can, overlook it and go about my way.
Yeah.
But the reminder is that's the thing, How do you engage in nonviolence communication to mention that?
Okay. Well, just work with me here, because I'm trying to see if we can get to a kind of a common understanding. So you said if I'm the one that left the mat outside and it's getting dirty or whatever, and I don't care, you said you would be indifferent? Like, you would just leave it out there?
No, I'm saying that's where do you trace the line?
Yeah.
To say like, hey, for the sake of the community flow, things should, for the most part, try to be put back as in place where they have to be.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I'm trying. I feel like I'm being annoying, but I feel like we might get to where you keep bringing up should. So this is a perceived like right way of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm not disagreeing with you.
No,
I
no,
don't
totally
like that. You know, there's like yoga mats left out. I think that. I think it would be better if we didn't do that, but we have to come to a place of understanding. So if I don't care that the yoga mats are left out, but you do, then we have to be willing to make some sort of compromise. So yeah, I guess it could just look like relating it back to feeling is better than relating it back to should and shouldn't. Does that make sense? So like, I feel. Let's just say sad. It makes you sad that yoga mats are left out because.
But that's what he's saying. You can't attach a feeling to it.
Because it's not.
So-
I'm not
What if you say-
feeling it.
what
I'm not feeling.
What if you say, I feel like it goes against
Well, that's not.
flow?
But that's not a feeling.
That's not a feeling.
Well, maybe
I
it
can say
doesn't
I
have
care
to
about this.
necessarily
Huh?
make you feel bad, but it can make you feel frustrated that someone else is not taking care of the space.
It doesn't. It doesn't. I'm kind of in the border. It's like something that is not really complete. It's not, like
Yeah.
bad or anything. It's just like in the border where you don't really feel.
What if you
Can you
could
just cut the feel part out and use the rest of the line?
What if you would explain how you would feel if it were picked up? So it's like you say, like, if things always got picked up and put away, I would feel really, at ease and, grateful
But that's-
for our clean space. And
But wouldn't that be an expectation?
No, I mean you're not expecting them to do anything. Like if
you're
they
just
don't agree
communicating
to
how you
it,
would feel.
How I would.
yeah. If it were a thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean potentially, Johnny, like you said, you could cut the feeling out of it.
Could it be like it disturbs my peace a little bit?
A little bit.
Yeah.
A slight sense of disease or something.
There's a slight sense of disease. Yeah,
Disease.
like disease.
I don't know if it's disease,
But
Oh,
that's
I
what
mean,
disease comes from.
Really?
Disease.
Yeah.
That is what
So there's a
Yeah.
small sense of disease when this happens. Can you pick up? Something, I don't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe we should just be violent about it.
We should just be violent.
Throw
Yeah,
this
just
No,
override this
Johnny.
But
whole
then the
thing.
problem is that you don't want to also like be the reminder, like,
Right.
and that's
Authority.
happens sometimes, huh?
The authority. The
Yeah.
authority.
You don't want to be. No, you just don't. You don't care
Trust
that
me, I know.
That's what
I
I'm saying.
know.
When you were spending some time here, like
Yes.
you're more aware of things. So it's like okay,
I know, dude. That's what I'm trying to figure out, the balance between letting people know about a common understanding that we agreed on, and that it's not being like adhered to or abided by, and that's okay. But like I plug in friendly reminders all the time.
Mhm.
Just like, hey, friendly reminder. Close the door.
Yeah.
At night. Yes.
I feel like when we see like a mug out or something, like I think that since we all have this mutual understanding that like we want to have a space that looks good and like organized and stuff like that. Like I think just sending a picture to the group me and being like, who left this here? Like I think that we all know that's not like a critique necessarily, but an observation.
I really like that.
Because we need
And then, like-
accountability.
Yeah, we need accountability because
But then
there's
I-
some kind of accountability as necessary.
Because that mug's been out there for like a week.
Huh?
So that mug was out there for like a week.
Oh
Whose
yeah.
mug is that?
Whose mug is that?
The
Is there a mug out there right now?
Yeah.
It's like a Darth Vader mug or something.
no, it's Luke Skywalker. Somebody brought it and I washed it today, so I don't know.
Oh.
There was like coffee in it, or
Maybe it was a guest. I don't.
Oh.
No one.
Well, that's
Yeah,
why I
guess
was
it's a
there.
Yes.
Because it was none of ours.
But like yeah, sending a thing to the group me and then like if we notice a pattern is when I think this like would be really important.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also like, kind of recognizing like every time you see a mug left out, we can go as far to send a picture to the group me.
I feel like
But
that-
you could also just pick the mug up.
yeah, Yeah.
I'm
that's-
just
that's-
saying we
that's-
don't want to we don't want that to be a pattern, but like if we all know that we have a tendency to forget about things, even though we agree that this space should be left lovely every time we leave it. But sometimes we do forget things. Sometimes it's just not in our immediate realm of awareness. And maybe it should be, but it isn't. So knowing that, maybe sometimes you're going to forget a mug, and so, like, maybe I'll just pick this up now. Same thing, like with the dishes. Maybe I'm not always able to do my dishes right then and there. And, this time you didn't do your dishes right then and there, so I'm going to clean them. And, I mean, we can try to hold each other accountability down to the very last act. We can definitely try to do that. But
For what?
what?
Or we can-
But for what?
Like, why would we do
Yeah,
that?
why spend so much
Yeah.
energy
Well, I
trying to do
think-
that when we
Exactly.
could just
That's the thing.
There's an
accommodate each
example.
other?
Let that shit go.
I feel like there's some examples of when we have when a mug has clearly been out for like days and days and days,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when I think something needs to be said about it, because it's like if you can't remember like what mug you used and where you left it, and like I mean we're humans, so, like obviously like
Put the
we'll,
weed
like,
down.
have moments of forgetting, but yeah, like it's
The
it's a
weed?
thing about mindfulness. It's like
Weed?
when you
Weed.
take
Weed?
something, you should.
Did you forget?
You could feel like that you can pick up after yourself and put it back, you know what I mean? And like I think just like not having accountability and just feeling like, oh, like I pick up mugs when I see them, and like someone else will pick up my mug if I just leave it here, will just like encourage the habit of just leaving things around. So I think accountability is important to an extent. Like, I mean, I haven't noticed a pattern where we're all leaving mugs around all the time. Like, I think I noticed that, like, if something is left out, usually after a day or two, usually a day, 2 max, it's gone and it's been cleaned.
Yeah.
If dishes are on the sink all day, I usually know whoever left them there in the morning was, like, in a rush and will clean them that night. And that usually happens. Like, I don't really experience it otherwise. So, I think we're okay kind of in that regard, generally.
I'll say on that same token, like,
We're doing great.
yeah, we're doing all right. It can, like, foster that pattern of, like, people just, being careless. But at the same time, like, we just have to be really careful about where we, maybe individually, maybe as a community, we won't come to a very, like, straightforward, like, when do we hold people accountable versus not. But it can also just foster that sense of compassion for your brothers and sisters and fellow humans,
And we could, do that random acts of kindness thing too. Like, I think that would
Yeah.
help encourage, like, the compassionate side of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think
I don't want
Okay. The last, unless you guys want to keep talking about this, the last note that Andre, you're really not enjoying this conversation, are you? No, I'm really curious. Are you or not at all?
We just talked about this. We've
What?
already talked about all this.
You don't have no idea what I'm about to say, or do you?
I can guess.
What are you gonna say?
I can read your mind. You were gonna say,
I
I love all of you guys so much, and I'm glad that I have a platform to share this information with you, and thank you, Hunter, for being so obviously receptive with your body language. That's what you were gonna say.
No, but I wish I had said that.
This is nonviolent communication, right?
Oh my god!
Wasn't serious.
No, I'm really curious, Hunter. Where's your head at?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how you're feeling.
I'm tired,
Okay.
and I didn't expect this. And
I literally told you last night and
you
sent a
didn't tell
message
me
about it.
No.
Yes, I
You didn't
did.
tell me we were gonna sit here and talk about communication.
Yes, I did. That's
No,
exactly
you
what I
didn't.
said.
I didn't receive that.
Okay. All right.
So
I'm sorry.
I'm
that came as a
listening.
surprise to you.
I'm just tired, and I'll
Okay.
put my head down.
All right, I hear you. Okay, last thing I was gonna say was just to reiterate: recognize your needs, recognize your fellow humans' needs, and be prepared to come to a compromise. And to further that, also be aware of where your non-negotiable needs are. So we have to be careful about how we navigate this, living, in such a abundant space, abundant with humans and needs, and sometimes our needs are going to conflict, and maybe neither one of us is willing to budge. So when and if that happens, we'll just have to be very careful about how we navigate those waters. And I will have a beautiful list of needs printed out for you guys later on this evening. Yeah. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you.